Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir, bonsoir à toutes et à tous. Bienvenue à cette nouvelle séance du séminaire Patrimoine spolié pendant la période du nazisme 1933-1945, conséquences, mémoire et traces de la spoliation, toujours organisée par l'Institut national d'histoire de l'art et la mission de recherche et de restitution des biens culturels spoliés entre 1933 et 1945 du ministère de la Culture, en coopération avec l'Institut national du patrimoine. Et merci de revenir, on le dit à chaque fois, mais c'est vrai, il y a des têtes familières et parfois des nouveaux venus. Bienvenue à tous et bienvenue également, on le dit à chaque fois aussi, à celles et ceux qui nous regarderont un peu plus tard en vidéo sur YouTube. Nous continuons cette 6e année du séminaire. Et vous vous souvenez peut-être, pour les fidèles, les plus fidèles, ou ceux qui ont revu toutes les séances en vidéo, que le séminaire avait commencé en 2019 par un tour d'Europe, un tour du monde presque, j'exagère un peu, mais un tour de la recherche de provenance avec différents chercheurs qui étaient venus présenter des études de cas, des dossiers spécifiques à différents musées dans plusieurs pays, aux Pays-Bas, en Allemagne, en Suisse, aux États-Unis. Et nous avions terminé en décembre 2019 avec Bart Iman qui était venu présenter la situation, une situation à la fois de la spoliation et des restitutions et des recherches en Belgique. Mais c'est vrai que depuis, nous n'avons pas beaucoup parlé de la Belgique. Et pourtant, pour ceux qui connaissent un peu nos dossiers et la recherche de provenance et la question des œuvres d'art spoliées, la Belgique, en tout cas vue d'ici en France, c'est un centre d'intérêt, car il y a eu évidemment un certain nombre de mouvements de biens, d'œuvres entre la France, la Belgique, l'Allemagne, les territoires du Reich en général. Il y a eu des œuvres spoliées en Belgique qui ont pu être transitées par la France, voire être restituées en France. Inversement, des œuvres spoliées en France qui ont pu être restituées à la Belgique. On connaît des cas comme cela. Et évidemment, les situations, il est intéressant de comparer les situations, ce qui s'est passé pendant la guerre, également le marché de l'art dans les deux pays. Et en plus, il y a eu un certain nombre de nouveautés en Belgique. On peut citer deux publications, ou sur la Belgique, deux publications de style très différentes, mais en 2023 et 2024. On a beaucoup parlé dans la presse en 2023 du livre de Gerd Sels sur le trésor de guerre des nazis, enquête sur le pillage d'art en Belgique, aux éditions Racine en France. Et puis tout récemment, une ancienne invitée du séminaire, Elisabeth Campbell, qui était venue en 2021, a publié aux presses de l'université d'Oxford un livre qui s'appelle Museum Worthy, Nazi Art Plunder in Post-War Western Europe, qui porte sur la France, sur la Belgique et sur les Pays-Bas, avec justement une recherche sur les actions entreprises dans l'immédiate après-guerre. Et puis, et c'est pour cela que nous sommes là et que nous accueillons nos invités ce soir, il y a eu le lancement, il y a quelques mois, en 2023, d'un projet de recherche, le projet donc provenance, vous nous direz comment il faut prononcer, vous avez vu qu'il y a un petit jeu un jeu de mots, voilà, sur la provenance des collections des musées royaux des beaux-arts de Belgique, et à la fois, mais je n'en dis pas plus, un projet sur la méthodologie de la recherche et sur la provenance elle-même d'un certain nombre d'œuvres acquises par les musées avant, pendant et immédiatement après la Seconde Guerre mondiale. C'est un projet qui porte sur la Belgique, mais qui est un projet international, qui est porté à la fois par l'Université libre de Bruxelles, par la Technische Universität de Berlin et par les archives de l'État de Belgique, et notamment le Centre d'études guerre et société, CEJO-SOMA. Et nos intervenants, je vais vous présenter dans un instant, que je remercie, Fenia Amstadt, Eléa de Winter, Alexandre Leroux, sont aussi constitue un projet en soi international, puisqu'il y a 2 chercheurs belges et une chercheuse allemande. Voilà, donc il nous a semblé, et Juliette Tray, qui suit le projet pour l'INHA, qui est dans le comité de suivi, ou le comité scientifique du projet Provenance, a suggéré aussi, a proposé cette invitation pour vous présenter ce nouveau projet tout récent qui nous intéresse déjà très certainement. Alors en quelques mots, avant de leur passer la parole, donc nous accueillons Fenia Amstadt, qui est actuellement doctorante en histoire de l'art à l'Université libre de Bruxelles et qui travaille sur la provenance d'un certain nombre d'œuvres acquises par les musées royaux des beaux-arts de Belgique entre 1933 et 1960. Projet de thèse qui s'inscrit dans le cadre du projet provenance. Fanny a déjà un certain nombre d'expériences de recherche, et notamment à la Villa Liebermann à Berlin, à Wannsee à Berlin, ou pour le musée mémorial Sachsenhausen à Oranienburg, si je ne me trompe pas. Et donc, on est en plein dans la recherche autour du marché de l'art et de la provenance, comme on va le voir. Et Léa de Winter est également en thèse à l'Université libre de Bruxelles, dont elle est diplômée auparavant de l'Université de Gand en histoire de l'art. Et Léa travaille sur le marché de l'art en Belgique entre 1933 et 1960, et après avoir également travaillé au carrefour de la provenance, de la recherche en provenance, du marché de l'art. Donc là aussi, sujet dans lequel nous allons nous plonger. Et Fenia et Léa sont toutes les deux membres au sein de l'Université libre de Bruxelles, du groupe de recherche en sciences des arts et de la culture, le GRESAC. Et enfin, Alexandre Leroux est pour sa part un expert en data, en maniement des données dans le contexte des sciences sociales, et apporte justement cette expertise de management des données et de recherche également au projet. Il va également nous expliquer son travail dans le cadre de ce projet, donc il marie aussi, comme beaucoup de projets aujourd'hui, comme le projet qui était porté ici, répertoire des acteurs du marché de l'art, le maniement d'un grand nombre de données et également la mise en valeur de ces nombreuses données, et avec un usage des outils numériques voilà, le plus approfondi et le plus utile pour les lecteurs ensuite et les chercheurs qui viennent après. Et enfin, c'est un projet, mais je crois que Alexandre va le dire tout de suite, c'est un projet international, et donc c'est un projet multilingue, et donc en Belgique on parle un peu le français, mais pas partout, on ne parle pas nécessairement français partout, et beaucoup d'acteurs ne parlent pas le français, pas les trois qui sont ici, mais d'autres acteurs liés au projet. Et donc, la séance aura lieu en grande partie en anglais, mais les questions pourront être posées bien sûr en français, et nos intervenants pourront y répondre en français ou en anglais si c'est trop difficile, et on aidera si c'est nécessaire. Voilà, certains l'ont déjà fait dans le passé, notamment dans ce petit tour d'Europe de 2019, donc on n'est pas très habitué, mais ce n'est pas non plus une première. Donc voilà, merci à vous.
Bonsoir, merci David pour cette introduction et à l'INHA de nous accueillir. Du coup, comme vous venez de le dire, on va passer à la suite du séminaire en anglais dû à la composition trilingue du projet. So, started in last October, ProvEnhance, enhancing the provenance data of the collection of the Royal Museum of Fine Art of Belgium since 1933, is a research project tackling art market studies and provenance research between 1933 and 1960. The Provenance Initiative seeks to establish an infrastructure for Belgian provenance research by fostering collaboration between academic and cultural institutions. Its primary goal is to position Belgium as a data provider within the international provenance research community and address the necessity for Belgium to align with international standards and methodologies in provenance research. Consequently, the project aims to fill the gap for structural research in the field of Nazi provenance in Belgium, and as a case study, critically examine the collection of the Royal Museum of Fine Art of Belgium. There has been long due need to address issues related to looted property from Jews during the Second World War in Belgium. It was demonstrated by recent investigations, such like those conducted by the journalist Geert Sels. And previously, in response to the Commission de Bus report in 2001, the Royal Fine Art Museum published research results which led to successful restitution, such as the return of a valuable piece by Lovis Corinth from the collection to his rightful heir in 2022. The Provenance Project is funded by the Belgian Science Policy Officer, BELSPO, and is the result of the collaboration between 4 institutions: the Royal Museum of Fine Art, l'Université Libre de Bruxelles, the Technische Universität Berlin, and the Belgian Study and Documentation Center for War and Contemporary Society, CEGESOMA. Furthermore, the project is accompanied by an international committee consisting of experts in provenance research, art market, and digital humanities. The core team consists of 2 doctoral candidates, Fenia Amstad and Elia de Winter, and 1 data scientist, myself. Elia is investigating the art market in Belgium before, during, and after World War II as a global network involving interconnected actors and events, whilst Fenia is utilizing an object-based research approach to enhance the provenance data of the acquisition made by the Royal Museum of Fine Art since 1933. This dual approach reflects contemporary methodological perspective and the synergy between art market research and provenance research in the examination of artwork, event, and actor linked to the Belgian context. For this project, primary sources include professional organization and museum archive, sales and exhibition catalog, war and post-war administrative archive, and judicial archive in Belgium and abroad, as well as overlooked sources like almanacs and fine art museum directories. Moreover, this project aimed to create a database and data structure center or key entity for provenance and art market studies, including event, object, actor, and their relationship. The resulting data will be openly accessible and shareable. Lastly, to enhance the project impact, the ProvEnhance initiative will actively involve civil society and the global scientific community in dialogue concerning provenance research and the art market in Belgium during World War II. The anticipated outcome encompasses a valorization trajectory that involves creating narrative for the museum exhibition, public history communication, and thematic guided tour to effectively engage with a broad audience. Fenia will now present the museum collection.
So the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium hold a big collection with around about 20,000 artworks that are mainly paintings, sculptures, drawings, but also prints. And those are preserved and studied in 4 different areas, such as the Old Masters Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, the Museum Meunier, but also the Museum Vise. And the collection management system, which is called Fabricius, registered around about 60 to 70% of this collection, which is also accessible online. Moreover, there is a big archive available in-house in the museum, which contains, for example, museum inventory, registers, agenda files, artwork files, but also files on the exhibitions, loans, administration, and so on. Moreover, there are external funds available, such as from des Amis des Musées, royaux, des beaux-arts de Belgique, but also curator papers. Les archives de l'art contemporain en Belgique are also part of this compilation of archives within the museum, and they hold, for example, archives of Belgian galleries, but also art collectors and experts. Moreover, there are different catalogs of Belgian art auction houses available in the library of the museum, and this rich compilation of archives and other holdings within the museum are an important part of the research of the team that is part of the ProvEnhance project. Apart from the consultation of the in-house archival material, the ProvEnhance team will, of course, also consult those archives, the external archives, from institutions and art dealers relevant to our research in Belgium and abroad. So after this brief introduction of the ProvEnhance project, Elia will now present the details of her PhD project in which she investigates the Belgian art market. Right after that, I will dive into the details of the presentation of the provenance research on the collection of the Royal Museums of Fine Arts, and in the end we have Alex, who will give an overview about the data situation of the project.
Thank you. So this is the order that we will speak in. And before I'll talk about the primary objectives of my doctoral project, I'll firstly present what's already known on the Belgian art market before and during the war, and how this compares internationally. So the Belgian art market, when compared to France and the Netherlands, is smaller in scale and is dominated by numerous small galleries competing. Unlike the centralized and regulated French market, the Belgian art scene is known for being less standardized, and it seems also less professional in nature, but this has to be further researched. And then similar to France, the United Kingdom and the United States, the art market experienced a decline in prices as a result of the economic downturn caused by the Great Depression at the end of the 1920s. And this crisis led to the closure of numerous Belgian galleries, primarily enterprises focusing on surrealists or with a very program that focused or that was more avant-gardist, whilst galleries that were focusing on more traditional art, they also faced challenges, but they were able to navigate through the difficult times more easily. And after a partial recovery of the Great Depression in the first half of the 1930s, the Belgian art market was not immune to the effects of the devaluation of the French franc in the spring of 1938. Robert Girand, the director of the Brussels auction house Palais des Beaux-Arts, expressed his concerns about this impact to his national and international relations. And in May 1938, he writes, unfortunately for the past 15 days or so in Brussels, due to the devaluation of the French franc and the fear of the Belgian devaluation, the situation from a painting sales point of view has become almost impossible. And around 4 months later, he writes again, but this time to the Parisian Galerie de l'Élysée, that the sales in Brussels have been reduced to zero for the last month or two. And these letters really testify of the fact that Belgium is part of an international market and really reacts to what is happening elsewhere in Europe. And during the war and at the start of it, the situation actually remained initially the same as at the end of the 1930s. The market was still not thriving and was actually slacking off when the war started. And this Belgian situation is comparable to other countries, and this is again reflected in the letters of Girand. In December 1939, he states in a letter that the situation of picture dealers in Paris must not be brilliant, and he says that in Belgium business has almost completely stopped. And scholars have pointed out that galleries in France and in the Netherlands, although there was this difficulty at the beginning of the occupation, that they did remain open at the beginning and during the war, but that they had very different trading patterns. And recent research on the Belgian market shows that actors were active during the occupation in Belgium, but to which degree really needs to be researched. And to know what was happening abroad during the war, my colleague and promoter, Professor Kim Oosterlink, in collaboration with different scholars, made a summary of 4 occupied markets, looking at France, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and Germany. And they made an analysis using the method of hedonic regressions to come up with this index, which we can use to make evaluations of the price. And what we see in this graph is that all 4 markets drop right before and at the start of the Second World War, or are at a low level. Then from the 1940s onwards, we see that the prices in all 4 markets start to rise. And I'm not going into detail of the evolution of each specific market, but there are really several reasons for the different evolutions that we can see on this graph, and for the fact that all these four markets rise or either boom at a certain point. And it is noteworthy that in the UK, a totally different situation is going on compared to the mainland of Europe. UK, in red, evolves more slowly, so the price increase is less steep than, for example, in the Netherlands and in Germany. And France, in blue, experience actually a kind of plateau from the end of the 1941 until 1944. And to understand all these different evolutions, it is really crucial to know that the war came with monetary policies and financial repression, which leads to this fear of inflation and also with a lack of investments. And so art became a very interesting alternative asset. Also, some individuals needed to hide their wealth and were looking for discrete assets. For example, black marketeers. And then on top of that, art also became a very interesting good for people wanting or needing to flee. And then on top of that, we also had a German buying spree, as art is a very important propaganda tool for the occupier, but also really part of the identity of the National Socialist regime. And many of the Germans collect for their private collections or for the large German museum collections that the Nazis were establishing. So what about Belgium during the Second World War? Well, in Belgium we see a similar situation. The art market is booming there, just as in the Netherlands, but this needs to be further investigated using, for example, hedonic regressions. But we already know through contemporaries, a very important source for our research project, that very early on in the war there is this fear of currency depreciation, which leads to this frantic buying across various assets. And in a rapport sur l'exercice présenté par l'administrateur délégué in November 1941, it is noted that the public, gripped by a panic for our currency, began to pounce on everything. Land, real estate, portfolio, securities, antiques, ancient and modern paintings and artworks without discussing any prices. And so this booming of the art market means that in Belgium this leads to an increase in the number of galleries, similar to what is happening in France. And through the work by journalist Geert Zels, we now have a partly view on what was happening in Brussels and in Antwerp, but reports from contemporaries from 1942 onwards mention that this increase in players is not only happening in the capital or in the provincial city as Antwerp, but also in places as Lokeren, Liège, Namur, but those still need to be investigated. The Belgian art market also appeared to be a great place to hide illicit profits. The price of the market is driven by black marketeers, and this is because the war creates new buyers, and several contemporary sources report on that too. And in 1943, Jean Millot wrote, "The wealthy farmer who allows the painting Touring Club calendar style to reach bits worthy of being quoted in the press deserves only the connoisseur's small mocking smile." In 2 or 3 years' time, the same farmer will want to resell his painting as speculation on butter is no longer lucrative, and he'll be indignant that he can't even find a single enthusiast. So this boom and change of clientele really has consequences. And the fact that artworks are an attractive commodity during the war means that many low-quality artworks, kitsch and fakes, start to circulate on the Belgian market. And already in 1941, the German Kulturdienst reports that in Belgium one finds predominantly a kind of decorative painting whose purpose is to fill empty walls in a pleasantly appealing way. And contemporaries mention also that everyone, like literally everyone, from former decorators to Sunday amateurs, became artists that sold artworks, causing a certain pictorial inflation. So, although we know some things of the Belgian art market, a comprehensive view for the period 93-1960 is lacking, let alone knowledge on less scrutinized places, and the existing studies are mainly qualitative and primarily concentrate on one individual actor, such as a certain dealer or a certain gallery, leaving really a gap in our understanding of the broader landscape. And the significance of the Belgian art market during the pre-war, interwar, and post-war periods is often overlooked because of that. And so the primary objective of my PhD is to address some of these gaps and to contribute to provenance research by mapping and analyzing a part of the Belgian art market in the period 93-1960. And to do so, I'll create different datasets together with Alex and Fenya, which can be used for qualitative and quantitative research or a combination. And throughout the PhD, we aim to establish a Belgian art market actors dataset to provide the research community and Fenya with a structured overview of some prominent and peripheral Belgian actors with basic information about these. Examples like different name spellings, founding and closing date of an enterprise, biographical data, because we believe that foundational information on actors is really crucial to understand the trajectories of artworks within Belgian and international networks. And this data set will help to understand which actors can be associated to the acquisition policy of the Royal Museum of Fine Arts of Belgium, an aspect Fenya is researching. And in addition to the actor data set facilitating network and geographical analysis, our goal is to carry out economic examinations because it is crucial to quantify the changes in the art market over the study period in order to understand its dynamics. And through the examination of stock inventory books and sale catalogs, sometimes annotated, our objective is to grasp the fluctuations of prices and trends and to enhance our knowledge of operations of the Belgian art market. And the Provenance project is a case study offering a methodological framework, hopefully for future provenance research on Belgian cases. So a second objective that I share also with Fenya is to document the sources and methods utilized to obtain these data sets and analysis and to later share this with the provenance research. And to achieve this, it's really essential to develop an understanding of the contextual landscape in which the Belgian art market actors functioned. So this means delving into the legal, political, cultural, and economic frameworks that influence the art market. And I'm doing this through literature review and archival research. And my PhD will result in a collection of scholarly articles, as this approach enables examinations of different data sets from various angles, but more importantly, because this format allows us to share these data sets and their conclusions with the provenance community already in the years to come and not at the end of the PhD. And for the actor data set, we're currently focusing on Brussels and Antwerp. Firstly, on these two places, because the case study is the Royal Museum of Fine Arts in Brussels. Therefore, a mapping of the capital is crucial to help Fenya. And secondly, we know that there existed an exchange between Antwerp and Brussels, but this connection has to be further explored. Then there are already several primary and secondary sources about these two cities available, sometimes even analysis. However, those are often incomplete because of their scope or have not been organized into a comprehensive data set. So most of the information contained within these sources has not yet been shared with the provenance research community. And here on the right is shown a list of Brussels auction houses and their addresses that has been established in 1993, part of a master thesis. And I'm currently enhancing this data with primary archival sources such as almanacs and newspapers. And on the left, you see a page of the Antwerp City Address Book, a source I use to map players for the Antwerp art market. If we have enough time, we'll see which other cities or towns may be noteworthy to explore. And to conclude, I'll briefly discuss an article I'm working on. Together with Kim Oosterlink, I'm analyzing the stock books from the Antwerp auction house Campo, founded in 1897 and active to date, and to facilitate statistical analysis regarding the numbers of artworks held and sold. We're cleaning the data set at the moment that covers the period 1937 until 1947. And this data set contains information on the buyers, which is really a bonus because details regarding the buyer are often in the art market a secret, which players don't easily share. And despite investigations on looting and the art market, there are still many unknowns regarding business conduct during the wartime. So with this data set, we can explore research inquiries such as Campo's business tactics, inventory turnover, changes over time, as well as identifying the prominent artists and types of artworks in the Campo inventory. And when looking at the composition of the clientele of Campo, a vast network connected to the auction house appears, linking to Antwerp and Brussels. And so delving into the case of Apollo could shed light on the center and periphery of the Antwerp art market, but also on the position of the auction house in a national and international context. And in avoidance of a hedonic regression, we already conducted an examination of the median nominal prices. And the data from the Antwerp auction house Campo was compiled for this analysis with data of the Antwerp auction house Van Herk and the Brussels Palais des Beaux-Arts. And despite the preliminary nature of our research, this figure illustrates the relative evolution in terms of price for each auction house. And this allows for in-depth evaluation of their performance and different sales strategies in a later point. And what stands out in this graph is the difference existing between the low end and the high end of the market. Van Herk in yellow at the bottom is known as a more prestigious auction house than Campo, yet it is in the low end with a very stable evolution. And when the numbers of Palais des Beaux-Arts in green, the highest thing, when they take a dive in 1944, Campo in blue in the middle experienced its first peak. And this Campo paper was an illustration of my current research focus. I'll now pass the floor to Fenya, who will provide a more detailed analysis of the situation in Brussels. While Fenya PhD centers around a specific case study, my research contextualized aspects of the Belgian market from a broader perspective.
Thank you, Elia. So before diving into the actual content of my presentation, I would like to clarify some terms I use. The term persecuted by the Nazi regime includes in the Belgian context people persecuted as Jewish, as Freemasons, as political opponents, and also as so-called enemies by the Nazi regime. Also, we work with the terms Nazi-persecuted cultural property and also Nazi-looted art, and both of them refer to looted and seized artworks, but also to flight assets and other forms of confiscation as a result of Nazi persecution. And as a lot of people migrated to Belgium in the 1930s, the flight assets play an important role in this context. So what are the objectives of my research? First of all, the research of the acquisition practices and networks within the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium between 1933 and 1960 are one of the core objectives. Also, the examination of case studies from the collection of the Royal Museums that were possibly confiscated as a result of Nazi persecution are the other objective, and this reflects also on the project's approach to use this collection as a case study. And these together will lead to creating best practice guidelines for future provenance research in Belgium, and this includes, for example, methods on how to approach other museum collections and how to analyze them, but also which specific archival resources and databases are useful for the provenance research in Belgium. My overarching aim here is to uncover the history and the fate behind the objects within the museum's collection in the context of Nazi persecution, and this is based mainly on a research on the specific situation in Belgium around the Second World War, with a collection of the Royal Museums as a case study, as I already mentioned, but also an in-depth examination of different archives, mainly in Germany and in Belgium, in order to be able to derive as much knowledge as possible about the Caesar practices that took place in Belgium during the 1930s and 40s. Part of the object-based approach in my research is the risk analysis of the project corpus as a preparation of an in-depth provenance research, and a crucial step to detect patterns and practices in the acquisition of the museum. So this is based on a so-called first check to determine whether there are grounds for conducting in-depth research based on occurring names of individuals persecuted by the Nazi regime, or also red flag names. And this risk analysis is moreover based on the existence of provenance gaps within our project corpus. So normally and ideally, the provenance of each painting in our project should be investigated, but since this is not possible due to the large amount of artworks within the collection and the project corpus, the assessment of risks within the project serves as a method to select those artworks, and that should be prioritized for the in-depth provenance research, and so then can serve as case examples. One of the fundamental aims of Nazi-era provenance research is to investigate and document wherever possible complete object biography, but also to clarify ownership changes between 1933 and 1945. But in fact, gaps in provenance chains are unavoidable, as we also learned from paragraph 4 of the Washington Declaration of 1998, which is cited here in the slide. Gaps in the provenance chains are at the same time an important indicator for the need of a critical analysis of the artwork's biography and the respective collection. And this raises, as a result, questions such as, what can we deduce about the context of the acquisition from the object data that is already available, for example, in the collection management system, and which provenances are particularly noteworthy and why. And a particular challenge after identifying and documenting those gaps, however, is actually researching those gaps and filling them afterwards. As provenance research is extremely labor-intensive, as you probably know, time and resources are also limited in a project like ours. It is necessary to, that provenance research is not only project-based, but an ongoing process in the museums, which is unfortunately often not the case. So after giving some infos about the methods and the approach of my research, I would like now to present the actual corpus of the ProvEnhance project. And for the project, we decided to focus our research on paintings to narrow down the selection of artworks to be researched. And hence, the project corpus consists of 649 paintings that were created before 1945 and acquired by the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium between 1933 and 1960. We excluded from those paintings the collection of the Museum Musées, which was inherited by the Royal Museums in 1936, and which is a corpus in its own. Also, we included to those paintings that I already mentioned, some donations from after 1960, for example, one big donation from Hülens van der Meer in 1988. And this is important and interesting for our research, as Franz Oehlens was doing business with Nazi authorities, so this donation is already known to be suspicious. Also, other donations in gratitude or memory of certain museum personnel within the Museum of Fine Arts in Belgium need to be included, as at least one of them is already known to be a collaborator with the Nazi regime. Most of the paintings that were added to the collection between 1933 and 1960 and that are part of our research corpus were donations or purchases, for example, through public auctions, at exhibitions, from art dealers, private individuals, or directly from the artist. And what we can see here is also that the third large transfer type are bequests. Plus, in the 1950s, 25 paintings were assigned to the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium by the Office Récupération Économique, here marked as CD. Most of the paintings were acquired in Belgium, and 16% were acquired in foreign countries such as Germany, Italy, England, France, Switzerland, and the US. So as a result, more than 50% of those paintings are from Belgian artists, and most represented artists are, apart from Flemish and Dutch old masters, for example, Gustave de Smet, Guillaume Vogel, Antoine Wirtz, Emil Clot, Emil Wouters, Isidor Verheiden, Isidor Opsomer, and so on. In order to be able to research the acquisitions of the Royal Museums of Fine Arts and their policies and practices, as one of my objectives of my research, it is also necessary to have a look into the network of the museum, and in particular into those people that were involved in the acquisitions. This raises also questions which actors repeatedly appeared in the context of the acquisitions, donations, and other added additions to the collection, and what role they played, what interest they were pursuing, and how they used their contacts to the museum in favor of the acquisition. And the network includes actors that appear as sellers, intermediaries, donors, and so on, and they are names like the Palais des Beaux-Arts in Brussels, Galerie Georges Giroux, Galerie Robert Fink, Franz Oehlens, Arthur de Heuvel, Peter Smith van Gelder, Peter de Boer, Paul Mikhailov, and Jacques Olegenhoek. These actors appear repeatedly as sellers or middlemen in the Royal Museums of Fine Arts acquisitions in the period under investigation, and some of them have been already studied in more detail than others. And these names also include institutions and individuals who are already known for their collaboration with the Nazi authorities, such as Franz Oehlens, who sold artworks to Walter Pech and Walter Andreas Hofer, or Arthur de Heuvel, who was working for the Dienststelle Mühlmann. Whereas it's not much known about the practices of the Galerie Robert Fink, for example. So there's a particular need to critically examine the provenances and of the respective paintings. And the investigation of the networks is therefore an important part of uncovering the museum's acquisition practices from the 1930s to the 1960s and their provenances. So the dual approach within the Provenance project is advantage here, as little is known about the actors of the Belgian art market yet, and my colleague Lea will fill this gap, which is also in favor of my research. In my research so far, I have already come across different kind of acquisition policies and practices of the Royal Museums of Fine Arts, and now I would like to present one of them as a case example. And in October 1940, Marguerite de Vigne, who was the chief curator at the Royal Museums of Fine Arts during the Second World War, requested Marcel Nunes, the General Secretary of the Minister of Education, who was also responsible for fine arts, to increase the budget for the acquisitions. So in her letter to Marcel Nunes, she wrote, "Current circumstances are giving the art market a new activity." And also she wrote, "Many collectors are led to part with precious works to liquidate part of their capital." So de Vigne aimed at benefiting from the new movements on the art market under the German occupation to be able to make relatively inexpensive acquisitions or purchases for the museum. Later, with the rising prices on the art market, the purchase of new artworks actually became increasingly difficult for Marguerite de Vigne, as she also reported to Marcel Nunes in 1943. Prices rose massively, so that the annual budget of 750,000 Belgian francs was far from sufficient for de Vigne's planned purchases of important and high-quality artworks. Nevertheless, she managed to make a few purchases, such as the portrait de Misia Godebska et Tadej Nadarson by Pierre Bonnard, which she was able to acquire for 2,000 Belgian francs in 1942, which we can also see here on the slide. And this is an interesting object for the provenance research, as well-known people are depicted here. We see Misia Serd on the left, who was a muse, friend, and patron of numerous renowned artists in Paris during the first half of the 20th century. And Tadej Nadarson was a lawyer, businessman, journalist, collector, and art critic. As a result, some of the information about the context of the work's creation, and thus also starting points for the provenance research, are known, which is oftentimes not the case, unfortunately. De Vigne purchased this painting from René Gaffé, a Belgian art critic and collector. For the moment, we don't know much about how he acquired his collection himself and what his relationship to the Royal Museums was. However, the correspondence between de Vigne and Nunes indicates that Marguerite de Vigne, like her predecessor Leo van Pulvede, also who wanted to purchase two Ruben paintings from the forced liquidation sale of the Van Diem Gallery in Berlin in 1935, paid little attention to the circumstances under which the artworks were sold. Instead, the primary motivation seemed to expand the museum's collection and at the most advantageous circumstances possible, given the insufficient budget for the new acquisitions. Therefore, these examples exemplify the problematic nature of some of the acquisitions of the Royal Museums. And as a result, it is necessary to follow up on these initial indications and do in-depth research in order to better understand the acquisition practices of the museum and its chief curators against the background of Nazi plunder of artworks. Having a look into this diagram depicting the numbers of paintings entering the museum between 1930 and 1969, we can detect different peaks. And by looking at the years 1933 to 1960, so our research focus here in this red thing, one of the highest peaks is visible in 1942, which corresponds to the wish expressed by Marguerite de Vigne to purchase more paintings. But in fact, the reason for this peak was the donation of Georges de la Faye, which consists of 39 paintings that were also catalogued by Marguerite de Vigne, but in the end it were not the purchases by her. Apart from that, we can also detect different other peaks. In 1936, There were more than 700 paintings acquired from the former house of Constantin Meunier, which we excluded from our research, so this is not part of this at the moment. And in 1937 was a number of 23 paintings donated by Pieter Smit van Gelder from Amsterdam and added to the collection. We can also see that the number of acquisition rose towards the end of the 1930s and during the Second World War, which corresponds to what Ilea mentioned already about the evolution of the Belgian art market at that time. Another peak is visible in 1951, and this is due to the cession of the paintings of the Office Récupération Économique, where 22 paintings were added to the museum's collection. Also, we have a big donation and bequest entering the collection in 1958. So, all in all, a quantitative approach as part of a multidisciplinary approach of provenance research. This allows to detect patterns and noteworthy information, which is a fruitful starting point to research a collection before diving into in-depth research, in my opinion. So those activities visible in this diagram need to be further explored to gather more information about the interaction of the historical context and the respective acquisition policies that came into play in the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium. So now I would like to give the floor to Alex, who presents the data management of the ProvEnhance project.
Thank you, Fenia. Hi again. So I will now talk about the project data management and its perspective. So for ProvEnhance, one of my tasks is to develop an open and shareable database for the art market and provenance research. This presentation will address two key elements aimed at achieving this goal. First, how the data will be conceptualized and managed in practice. Secondly, how this data will be collected, processed, and integrated within a unified research environment. But first, let's clarify what an open and shareable database entails. In short, our goal is to get our result out of the silos of our cultural institution in order to provide external access to our data, to connect with other institutions, in order to consolidate collaborative research effort, as well as exploring new research questions. So there are two big acronyms in this direction, which are FAIR and LOD. First, the idea is to adhere to the FAIR principle. That means to publish our data in a format that are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. The second is to construct our database as a linked open data, so LOD, which means making our data openly accessible, interconnected, interlinked with other sources, but also readable by both machines and humans. But first, to build a database, we need a blueprint, we need a data model. So in short, a data model provides an understanding of how the information are structured within a database, as well as what operation can be performed upon those information. Data model in general can be categorized in three types: conceptual, logical, and physical. Conceptual data model is a data model that tells what the system contains. It's an organized view of the database concept and their relationship. A logical data model is how the system should be implemented, what are the technical maps and rules of the data structure. And finally, the physical data model is how the system is implemented within a specific database system. So for the cultural heritage sector, the reference data model is designed by the International Council for Documentation, the CIDOC, and they propose a conceptual reference model called the CIDOC CRM. It provides a framework for knowledge about events, objects, and their relationship within the cultural heritage collection. The CIDOC CRM, so the conceptual model, is composed of 100 of classes, twice as much property. In that sense, it's super complex, and it aims to encompass as many scenarios as possible. That complexity presents challenges, primarily because it can be overwhelming to implement effectively. As you can see, it's really complex. and it might not translate in practical application. Consequently, we will not implement it directly. Other solutions exist, such as the linked R profile, which try to simplify the CDOC CRM and offer a solution for its implementation. So, with that in hand, we should be able to just open up a database, import the data, and we would be good to go. However, we are at the beginning of a long research project, and we have limited data at the moment, and we don't know exactly what they look like, how they will look like, and the CDOC CRM, while it provides a conceptual reference model, it primarily describes museum collection, and it's not tailored for art market data. So deciding upon a rigid structure before actually having our whole data, or at least a part of the data, will result in issues. We might have data that don't fit the model, or that cannot be represented accurately within all its nuance. Or on the opposite, the model might end up to be too complex and challenging to navigate and use. So we will start more with a bottom-up approach. So the solution we chose is to construct the data model and the database over the research project. As the data get created, we build a data model, and instead of a massive import, we opt for an iterative population of the database. We will still try to be as close as possible of the CDOC CRM while allowing to have flexibility and to incorporate new type of information. To do that, we need a pipeline, we need a workflow, and the goal is to transition from unstructured research material to structured data that can be imported within a database. So the content of the database is then used for various purposes during and after the project. We can construct a list of relevant actor, object, we can do exploratory analysis, visualization, such as network of relationship. We can perform advanced statistical model and analysis. So in short, the database is a core element for the research project. Then we have a question is, what physical database are we going to implement? We are not going to create a new database from scratch, so we are looking at existing solution. Here is a list of various solutions that exist. Some are open sources, some are closed sources, but paid. Some are specific to the field of cultural heritage, while others target a more general scope. Wikibase, that is the software behind Wikipedia, seems like a good contender. It's popular, flexible, it has a lot of plugins, it has support, it's in active development. But nonetheless, that flexibility has a cost. Unlike Whisky or ResearchBase, Wikibase doesn't come with any conceptual model already implemented, such as the CDOC CRM. But some initiatives propose data models that are trying to map the CDOC CRM to Wikibase, such as NFDI for culture. We are open to any feedback of these various services, as we are only now in the process of deploying it at the museum. So we've discussed the data model, the database. Now let's talk the actual data, what we will feed into that database. Because our team is multidisciplinary and employ various research methods and units of analysis, we encounter vastly different research workflow and data production processes. We are currently reflecting on the best way to transition from this research node to actual structured data. So for the art market research led by Elea, two approaches are envisioned. One is qualitative, the other is quantitative. For the quantitative work, she will focus on the sale of object and the price, sourced from auction catalog, accounting book, etc. So this data is mostly represented in large tabular data set. On the other end, for the qualitative work that Elea undertake, she will focus on tracing and documenting actors of the art market, sales, and their relationship between them. So those are data that are more represented as either extensive textual content or relational information. Similarly, for provenance research led by Fenya, the focus will be on specific objects chosen from the museum, and she will start from a small corpus and delve into the detail of the history of transfer, the actor involved, contextual information. And so this information can be represented as tabular data, textual content, but also relational information between the different actors. With those two approaches the main entity that allow to model this information, like the most basic block of a model, are event, actor, object, location, and time. At the moment, most of those information exist in digital notebook. The team uses Obsidian and Excel table. Our workflow involves transitioning from these nodes, which can be conceived as unstructured data, towards structured data. So this is an excerpt from Elia notebook. It's about an auction house called Heb de Brekpot Gallery. So the idea is to transform this node into a data structure that is usable in our context, and we need to conceptualize the Brekpot Gallery as an entity, as an actor with various properties. This property may include a label, possibly with various spelling of its name, different type of actors, a description, its location. That gallery is also connected to various entities, such as its founder, Joseph Brekpot, and other gallery like Campo that Elia talked about before. The Brekpot entity is also referenced in various sources, the Almanach van Antwerp, the Campo data stock, the Royal Museum of Fine Art of Belgium sale catalog, and the Royal Fine Art Museum of Antwerp acquisition report. So these various characteristics of the Brekpot gallery can be consequently presented as a graph, where we have a central entity, the Galerie Brekpot, and that's described by all those various properties. Most of those properties are not new, but refer to the CDOC CRM implementation within the NDFI culture data model for Wikibase. So a property can be either text, such as the description, or aliases that we have, so the various naming that the Galerie Brekpot has. But it also can be just other entities, and can encompass other variable type, other data type, including external LEDs, which allow to interlink that database with other external sources. Additionally, the property may include URL, geographic coordinate, image, etc. So for example, here the gallery is described as auction house and art gallery. Those terms are actually entities that are linked to a respective external vocabulary, which is the Getty Art and Architecture Thesaurus. Similarly for Belgium, it's linked to the Getty Thesaurus of geographic name. In this graph, there is one piece of information we could not model correctly from the node, and it's only available as description, and is the sequence of location the gallery was situated in. So it's written that it was first situated in Brussels, then moved to Antwerp, and that has a lot of uncertainty because we don't have the exact period when this moved from one to another. And at the moment, it's just represented as 2 addresses for the data. Finally, the Gallery Brekpot, with its multiple properties, can be imported within a database, and here it's visualized through the web user interface of a local Wikibase instance that we are hosting, and where we find all the properties that were presented in the previous slide. So this can be seen as an end result. So in conclusion, in this presentation, I've moved from the description of a conceptual data model to various steps toward a practical implementation, reflecting on the best way to design our data structure and select a database. Our long-term goal here is to propose a data model that caters for both art market studies and provenance research. One way to achieve this is through the construction of a research environment that, as the project evolves, captures various data, whether internally produced or externally sourced, and that are imported within a uniform framework from which it's possible to perform various kinds of analysis and collaboration. Wikibase seems suited for that task. We are open to feedback and welcome questions regarding workflow efficiency, from unstructured node to structured node, software recommendation, or potential issue with using Wikibase, or any suggestion. I will now yield the floor to my colleague Elia for the conclusion.
Yes, to conclude, I think it became clear through this presentation, or that what we hope, that there was a very specific situation going on the Belgian art market before, during, and after the war. As both Venya and me pointed out, that there were different active art market actors during that period, such as auction houses and the museum. The Belgian art market appeared to be connected with neighboring countries, This is only one reason, is because Belgium was a country with relative free and open borders. And as we have shown during this presentation, via the objectives of both Venya and my research, we really aim to advance national provenance research and to enhance any created data and its accessibility through the help of our data scientist, Alex. And we hope that this method and working in team will help the Provenance project to promote transparency on Belgian provenance research related to artworks acquired or transferred in the period before, during, and after the Second World War. And the examples that the three of us gave highlight, I think, the importance of having this complementary approach, combining art market studies with provenance research and data science, as there is great potential for Belgian provenance and art market research, but we can only unmine that when we work together. And on behalf of the team, I want to thank initié for having us, and you, the audience, for your time. We're very happy to answer any questions in English, French, or even another language, perhaps. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour cette présentation qui fait écho évidemment aux préoccupations que l'on connaît, que l'on a ici en France, et à des projets de recherche que nous connaissons, à la fois sur des recherches de provenance dans les musées, des questions sur les acquisitions par les musées pendant la guerre, et des projets touchant aux acteurs du marché de l'art, avec évidemment le projet répertoire des acteurs du marché de l'art en France pendant l'occupation, qu'a porté l'Institut national d'histoire de l'art, avec aussi l'Université technique de Berlin. Et donc on travaille d'ailleurs ensemble, nous, le ministère de la Culture, les musées et l'INHA pour le projet RAMA, comme on l'appelle, répertoire des acteurs du marché de l'art. Et là, vous avez aussi un projet où vous essayez de tout faire en même temps. Donc évidemment, ça nous parle et ça nous... Et c'est aussi un modèle évidemment très, très intéressant. Il y a sans doute des questions. Moi, j'en ai aussi un certain nombre. Peut-être, ça c'est peut-être moi qui n'ai pas bien suivi ou pas bien compris. Est-ce qu'on peut juste revenir sur le tableau de Bonnard, sur ce que vous avez compris ou ce que l'on sait des propriétaires avant l'entrée dans le musée? Pardon, ce n'est peut-être pas pour moi très clair, mais ou de ce qu'on sait déjà. Quelles sont les étapes? Est-ce que vous pouvez juste rappeler, parce que c'était un des exemples importants.
Alors, on n'a que l'information que René Gaffé, en fait, il était le proprio avant de vendre le tableau au Musée royaux des beaux-arts. Du coup, on n'a pas, pour le moment, pour l'instant, on n'a pas une idée qu'est-ce qui se passait avant. Donc la provenance, non.
D'accord. Et on a un propriétaire plus ancien depuis après Bonnard, enfin depuis la création, ça non plus.
Pour le moment, c'est pas recherché la provenance, c'est une question.
D'accord. Non, c'était juste pour être sûr d'avoir bien compris. J'ai une question un peu générale aussi. Donc là, ce sont les musées royaux des beaux-arts de Belgique. Est-ce qu'il y a des démarches un peu équivalentes dans d'autres musées ou des musées de ville ou d'autres collectivités publiques en parallèle ou liées à vous aujourd'hui, puisque ici, voilà, nous avons en France un certain nombre de projets de recherche dans des musées nationaux et des projets qui se développent dans des musées relevant de collectivités locales qui se parlent ou qui ne se parlent pas. Donc, c'était un peu pour comparer là aussi.
Thank you for your question. I'll answer in English to have the nuances right. There are in Belgium different provenance initiatives going on at this moment. Some are focusing, however, on different time periods, so they are not looking at the Belgian art market or not doing provenance period research for the period 93-1960, but are like working with the Africa Museum, so working on objects that came to Belgium during the colonization period and afterwards. Then we also have some archaeologists working on provenance of archaeological artifacts. But in Antwerp, however, in the Royal Museum of Antwerp, recently they hired one provenance researcher, but she's not working on a research project as we are. She's more there to do the provenance for a certain amount of cases. And we try, as for her, Sabrina Lind, it's also a new field for her provenance research. That's the same for me. Fenia, however, is a bit more experienced. But as it's a new field for us, and as Belgium on top of that is lagging a bit behind in provenance research, we try to meet regularly to put together our knowledge, because she's working in Antwerp, I'm looking at Antwerp, there was this connection, so we try to unify a bit. Fenia, do you have anything to add for that question?
No, I mean, maybe just in general, there's not much provenance research on the Nazi era going on in a structured way, like we're doing it right now at the Royal Museums of Fine Arts. But as far as I know, there are different other people in Bruges, for example, that provenance researchers that try to get more into detail with the collection of a museum. But in general, it's really just a starting point for Belgium, you can say. So we try to connect as much as possible with other museums as well, and then to work together.
Et d'utiliser, de faire une base de données commune, d'utiliser ce que nous a présenté aussi.
Oui, si possible, oui.
D'accord. J'ai une autre question, alors plus, ce n'est pas complètement votre sujet, mais que se passe-t-il si dans le cadre de ces recherches, en étudiant les œuvres acquises par les musées royaux, vous trouvez une œuvre clairement spoliée, que ce soit pillé, vendu sous la contrainte, ou ayant fait l'objet de vente de floatgood, comme vous l'avez rappelé. Comment cela se passe après? Ça n'est peut-être pas arrivé, je ne sais pas s'il faut souhaiter que cela arrive, mais ça arrivera peut-être. Comment se passe on est un peu en dehors de votre projet, mais la suite, si on découvre une œuvre spoliée, comment savez-vous et comment ça se passera? Et qui prend une éventuelle décision?
Alors, en général, ce n'est pas prévu que le projet ProvEnhance va traiter le restitution claims. Donc, c'est plutôt un projet pour le musée en général, pour voir comment agir, comment traiter cette situation si jamais ça va arriver. Mais en vrai, je pense, parce qu'il y avait déjà la recherche de Gertzet, le journaliste qui était déjà mentionné tout au début de notre présentation, en vrai, je pense qu'il y aura des différents restitution claims en Belgique et aussi pour les musées royaux des beaux-arts. Donc, c'est pas clair pour le moment, mais vu qu'il y avait déjà la restitution de Lovis Corinth Blumstilleben il y a 2 ans au musée, je pense en général les musées sont ouverts pour les restitutions et trouver une solution comme prévu dans les Washington Principles.
D'accord, merci. Est-ce qu'il y a déjà des premières questions? Oui. Jean-Marc Dreyfus, merci.
En français?
Oui.
Merci pour votre présentation. J'étais frappé par la question linguistique, ce qui n'est pas étonnant en Belgique, mais est-ce que vous avez une réflexion sur ces archives? Est-ce que les archives administratives des musées sont toutes en français, ou est-ce qu'elles sont également en flamand pour la Flandre belge? Est-ce que vous avez une réflexion sur le glissement du vocabulaire? Un mot séquestre, comment est-ce qu'il est traduit en allemand, j'imagine, en flamand, en français? Est-ce que cela a une influence sur vos... Puisque je suis quand même frappé par le fait que les bases de données vont être apparemment très anglophones. Voilà, si vous voulez réagir sur cette question.
Merci pour cette question. Je pense que c'est très important de aussi jeter un œil sur la question des langues parce que, évidemment, en Belgique, c'est une situation très particulière. Mais normalement, dans les musées de royaux des beaux-arts en Belgique, il y a la plupart des archives qui sont en français. Il y a aussi des documents en flamand, mais c'est plutôt français. Et pour le reste, il faut toujours travailler dans les deux langues. C'est prévu par la politique en Belgique. Donc, il faut absolument préparer la base de données en français, en néerlandais aussi. Et vu qu'on travaille normalement en anglais, on va plutôt aussi essayer de présenter tous aussi en anglais. Et donc, pour la question de la recherche de provenance, c'est très, très important de voir aussi comment les titres, par exemple, étaient traduits, transmis. Et c'est une question, pour moi, pour le moment, c'est pas clair comment je vais travailler avec ces problèmes, parce qu'au final, c'est un problème, dans un certain point, de trouver des tableaux dans les archives, parce que les titres sont peut-être traduits, changés, tout ça. Donc, c'est à voir aussi comment ça marche.
And to add to Fenia's response, when we look at the sales catalogs from auction houses, for example, the Campo case I'm working on, there we see that most of the sale catalogs are both in Dutch and in French. Sometimes they are only in French. During the war, they are only in Dutch. And sometimes some titles are translated and sometimes not, so this really leads to confusion. And in Belgium you need all the languages, the French, but also the German and the Dutch. Yeah.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions en attendant... Ah oui, pardon, madame, oui.
Oui, donc en fait, vous travaillez que sur ce musée de royaux des beaux-arts de Belgique, n'est-ce pas? Pas le musée Cursus de Liège, pas le musée, les musées de Gand, les grands musées qui auraient pu acheter des choses pendant la guerre.
En tant que recherche de provenance, c'est que sur le musée royaux de beaux-arts de Belgique, c'est vrai, mais vu qu'Eléa a fait aussi une recherche sur le marché d'art en Belgique, ça touche aussi d'autres musées qui étaient des acteurs aussi sur le marché d'art, donc c'est pas si clair. Il y a ces mélanges de différentes personnes et institutions qui sont à rechercher en vrai. Mais pour la recherche de provenance, la recherche sur les objets, c'est que la collection de musées royaux à Bruxelles.
Bonsoir, merci beaucoup pour votre présentation qui était super intéressante. J'avais une question par rapport à votre corpus. Donc c'est toutes les œuvres acquises par les Musées royaux des beaux-arts de Belgique, donc entre 1933 et 1960, à l'exception de l'ancien musée Meunier. Alors on a vu dans le graphique en 1936 qu'il y avait un grand pic d'achat, si j'ai bien vu les couleurs. Et je me demandais quelles étaient les raisons de l'exclusion de cette partie du corpus. Est-ce que la collection, du coup, enfin cette partie-là du musée ne correspond pas, n'est pas pertinente, disons, pour votre analyse, ou alors il y a des raisons peut-être plus pratiques d'accessibilité aux archives, aux données? C'est une question plus pratique. Merci.
Alors, on a décidé d'exclure la collection de musée Meunier parce que, en fait, c'était la maison de Constantin Meunier qui était achetée par le musée royaux des beaux-arts en entier, en complète. Et du coup, c'était ajouté à la collection des musées royaux des beaux-arts en 1936, comme je l'ai présenté aujourd'hui. Mais en général, la question, c'était qu'est-ce qui se passait avec cette collection de Constantin Meunier. Et en vrai, dans cette maison, il n'y avait que des tableaux de lui. Et donc, c'était pas pertinent pour notre recherche. Et en plus, c'est une grande collection, c'est un grand corpus en soi. Du coup, on a décidé d'exclure ça et juste concentrer sur les autres tableaux.
Merci beaucoup.
En attendant une autre question sur le marché, sur les acteurs du marché. Donc vous avez cité un certain nombre de sources. Là aussi, pour faire quelques comparaisons avec ce que l'on peut connaître, est-ce que certaines galeries, certains marchands, certaines maisons de vente sont toujours actifs, existent toujours aujourd'hui en Belgique? Et dans ce cas-là, si c'est le cas, y a-t-il une question d'accès aux archives? Est-ce qu'il y a une coopération des acteurs privés? On sait que c'est souvent difficile un peu partout dans le monde.
Yeah, merci pour cette question. It is difficult because, as I mentioned in my presentation, the Belgian art market is less centralized than the French, and on top of that, Belgian art market players don't need to archive all their documents at all. So a lot of enterprises that are still active, and it are not many, didn't hold on to their archive, so we have that problem. On top of that, we're still at the beginning of the project, so we're really trying to map which were the actors in the period 1933-1960, and on top of that we're trying to figure out, okay, which ones were still active, or which ones perhaps did a break but started again in the 80s or 90s, or which inventories were possibly passed over to private individuals. And we also are looking to raise a call for participation and for enterprises or private individuals who have taken the archive or have received the archival funds to share them with us if they want. But it's difficult, but sometimes we have archival funds available of those dealers. But a lot of it is also lacking, unfortunately.
Okay, merci. François.
Oui, merci pour votre présentation. Pour ma part, je n'ai pas. Pouvez-vous préciser en quoi l'activité du marché de l'art en Belgique pendant cette période est une spécificité par rapport à d'autres pays, à d'autres marchés?
So the question is why specifically the situation was specific during 1933 and 1960 in Belgium on art market in comparison to other countries.
Yeah, well, okay, then I did understand it correctly. Thank you for this question. It was more specific because Belgium, as I mentioned, was less centralized than French, so it's a more free market, which leads that there are numerous smaller players that didn't register officially, that only pop up sometimes in newspapers but are never registered in like a commercial registry. So we have that. On top of that, we also know, or that's something that Kim Oosterling, my colleague, has pointed out, that Belgium is really this country with more open borders, like a country where a lot of smuggling is happening, and where a lot of dealers apparently had very good context with actors from the National Socialist regime, and this combination of having good context and being able to move more freely in comparison apparently with other countries makes for a very specific situation. Artworks that often travel through Belgium to go to Germany or to the Netherlands or to France, and those passing in Belgium has not always been noted because it was less regulated and standardized. So that are the differences and the specific situations that we know at the moment, but this really needs to be further investigated to really track down the specificities of the situation. But we have enough indications through the contemporary sources, which I used in my presentation, to already know that it was different different in comparison to France and to the Netherlands.
Merci. Monsieur de Marézoyens, qui était l'intervenant le mois dernier, ici même.
I have two questions, unrelated questions. The first is, have any pictures in the Royal Museums of Fine Arts in Belgium been identified as having been spoliated from Jewish collections? And the other unrelated question is, I'm assuming that ProvEnhance doesn't include rare books or illuminations or illuminated manuscripts, but does a similar project exist at the Royal Library or elsewhere for libraries or antiquarian books? Because there was a very active antiquarian book market, partly in Jewish hands, in Belgium before the war.
Coming back to your first question, maybe in terms of if there's already looted art have been identified within the collection of the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium, we have the restitution case in 2022, where the Blumenstillleben by Lovis Corinne was restituted to the rightful heirs, which was a Jewish family, and this was initially brought back to the collection of the Royal Museums by the Office Récupération des Économiques in the 1950s. And then after some research has been made in the past years, and also the presentation of those artworks within the CMS on the website of the museum, then the lawyer of the family could track down this case, this painting, and then was able to file for a restitution claim with the museum. Apart from that, we don't know of any looted or confiscated art as a result of Nazi persecution, because we don't know the provenances yet. This is something that is part of the project and also a task for the future as well, to track down all the provenances to see if there has been confiscated art in the collection. So there might be, but we don't know yet.
So that is in fact very little compared to, say, the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam,
yes,
museums here in exactly. Paris and elsewhere.
Yeah, this is exactly the situation in Belgium that is very specific today, because there has been so little provenance research been taking place in the last centuries, so to say. So there's a lot to do, and the provenance project is one of the first provenance research projects in Belgium. So it's very start, actually. So after what the journalist Gerd Seltz published in his book 2 years ago, where he also hints on provenances that might be conspicuous, might be looted art be located in Belgium, it is the starting point. We're at the very beginning, and there's a lot to do in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to answer then your second question, which Fenya already did a bit in the second part of her answer, I'm not sure at the moment if there's any similar project for libraries at the moment. But as Fenya mentioned, different projects are popping up at the moment in Belgium, and a lot of cultural and heritage initiatives or groups that want to bring together different institutions from the field are now in this year organizing sessions so that everybody can come together and share practices. Because I think in libraries there will be for sure people looking or being busy with provenance, but not like more as a side part from their job, not like because they have been acquainted a certain project or having a certain project. But in the book of Sells, he also mentions that a lot of dealers that are not only dealing in paintings or sculptures or fine arts, but also deal in antiques and in books. And we know that some dealers during, right before the Second World War or during the war also acquainted big lots of books that came from libraries or from other places, from private collections. So this is really an aspect that needs to be researched, but I'm not sure if it will be within our scope. So we hope that other institutions, such as libraries, will come up with their own provenance projects. Also the same with the other institution, which was the question by somebody else in the audience. We also hope that other institutions like the museum in Liège, of course, will also start with such a project, because we cannot do the work ourselves.
Merci beaucoup. Je crois qu'il y a une autre question. Madame là-bas, pardon. Merci.
Yes, I have a question about the Jewish populations. As if I'm right, there were more Jewish people in Antwerp than in Brussels, and more in Brussels than in Liège. And do you have a clue of how many of those families had to sell the objects before they felt that they had the urgency to flee?
Actually, this is also something that we don't know yet. This is part of the research I will do in the future, hopefully, by having a look into the restitution claims and restitution files that are in the archives in Berlin hold, for example, or in Germany in general. But there's no overview about the situation of Jewish families in Brussels and Antwerp and Belgium in general, how many people were touched by confiscation by the Nazis, how many families and people needed to sell their artworks, under which circumstances. All of this is still to be researched in more depth, because until now there are several publications, papers, and some books that deal with this just at like a very minor amount, and just by mentioning that, but there's not an extensive research on this topic yet.
Yes, and to add to that question, we know that the State Archive holds this commerce register in which liquidations of enterprises was also noted. And this is also a source that I will go through at a certain point, because sometimes also private collections are mentioned into the liquidations in those files on the liquidations of enterprises. So sometimes we will obtain this information, but like by going through another way and a different source. But that's, I think, really what typifies provenance research, that you know so many things not at the moment, and that you really have to be creative in finding solutions.
Merci, c'est une bonne façon de conclure. Peut-être juste, là aussi, pardon si je l'ai mal noté, le projet a une durée prévue, une durée de vie du projet. Enfin, il y a vos thèses, donc c'est au moins cette durée-là, j'espère. Est-ce que, ou il n'y a peut-être pas de limite, ce qui est rare aujourd'hui, mais ce qui serait bien, parce que ça va durer. Mais pour combien de temps
le projet est prévu sur 4 ans.
Ouais.
Donc ça fait 6 mois qu'il a démarré en octobre.
D'accord.
Plus ou moins 6 mois. Où la limite est finale.
Très clair. D'accord. Très bien. Mais écoutez, merci beaucoup. Quelques mots simplement pour la suite. Il n'y a pas de prochaine séance tout de suite. Il n'y a pas de prochaine séance avant l'été. Mais il y a déjà une date retenue pour la prochaine séance qui existe, qui est en septembre, le 25 septembre. Le programme est connu de nous, mais pas encore tout à fait finalisé, donc je ne peux pas vous l'annoncer précisément, mais ce sera bien. Et donc restez bien, continuez de regarder le site, on envoie des invitations. Je ne suis pas sûr d'ailleurs d'avoir le nom de tous les participants, enfin les auditeurs fidèles, donc n'hésitez pas non plus à nous laisser votre nom si vous voulez recevoir un mail d'invitation, mais tout figure toujours sur le site de l'INHA et sur les pages de la mission de recherche sur le site du ministère de la Culture quelques jours avant, mais donc en tout cas c'est le 25 septembre. Et voilà, là, on continue au prochain semestre et toute l'année scolaire avec un certain nombre de participants déjà identifiés, mais voilà, on n'a pas encore les dates exactement calées. Donc 25 septembre, en revanche, on sait que c'est calé, mais on vous dira bientôt qui viendra. Merci beaucoup d'avoir fait le déplacement jusqu'à Paris. Et puis, nous, on va se revoir demain, justement, on peut le dire, pour travailler, un peu échanger sur nos recherches entre la France et la Belgique. Et j'espère que ce sera aussi, votre venue sera aussi l'occasion de nouer quelques contacts ici à Paris avec les différents chercheurs, les musées et les spécialistes aussi de la gestion de données que vous nous avez montré. Merci beaucoup.